Hey everyone, Brian Zane here. We at Wregret HQ hope you're having a safe and happy holiday week and that you enjoy this new episode of Better Champion between Hulk Hogan and Diesel. This would be the time for Big Hoss McGraw to come out and talk to you about our sponsor, Surfshark VPN, but he's been a little bummed out ever since the whole mauve thing. Come on, Hoss, the people want to hear from you. Come on and do the thing.
No, my faith in humanity is shattered, and for that matter, so's my faith in reality.
It's the Pilly gimmick talking. So the mauve transubstantiated out of the desert after you looked for him for 3 decades. Worse things have happened.
Yeah, like what?
Well, me having to rock this ridiculous beard, for one, but also having your personal data hacked into or your identity stolen is no fun, but Surfshark can help keep you safe when you're online, even while you're on public Wi-Fi. And it's more than just data protection. Surfshark blocks viruses and malware, it has an ad blocker, and lets you surf the web from anywhere in the world. Think of all the international Netflix content you're missing out on right now, Hoss.
Do they have a special offer?
Well, you better believe it, just in time for the holidays. Support the channel by downloading Surfshark using the link in the description. Not only do you get 83% off your order, but for a limited time, now you get 4 months for free. Thanks for watching, folks. Now enjoy this special edition of Better Champion. Okay, Hoss, you can come out of there now. Some of us also need to use the bathroom. Did you eat too much pizza again?
It was therapy pizza.
He'll be fine.
Hey, let's do it for the content. Mega Ran. Let's go. Let's get it. Dick Kick City. It gets gritty when Mega Ran come through. The kid gets busy. Work yourself into a shoot, but you know it's legit. Like what you like, just don't be a dick. Hey, wrestling with regret. Let's get it. Yeah. What's that set? Maybe you should bottle it. Drink it and spray it on. Get Claude to model it. 8 years in, can't look back. Who else can make the Lord sweatsuits look whack? Wrestling with regret. Let's get it. Yeah.
Hulk Hogan and Kevin Nash, 2 legends who are forever linked after the creation of the New World Order. But 1 year before the NWO set wrestling on fire, the 2 men were the flag bearers of their respective promotions at a time when business was waning. Still reeling from the steroid trial, the World Wrestling Federation needed a new hero to help them bounce back. At the same time, World Championship Wrestling was looking for a huge shot in the arm to make their company more legitimate. For a combined 827 days, Hulk Hogan and Diesel ruled their respective promotions as champions. But which top guy did a better job leading their locker room as the 2 companies braced for the next chapter in their interpromotional war? For the first time ever in this segment, we are reaching across promotions. Hulk Hogan and Diesel. Who was the better world champion during the mid-1990s? Using 5 handy pieces of criteria, we're going to try and find out. Let's dive in. When it comes to wrestler debuts, there probably won't be one as big, as loud, or as gaudy as Hulk Hogan's ticker tape parade upon signing with WCW. The Hulkster immediately became the #1 contender to Ric Flair's world title, finally delivering on a match the WWF had passed on a couple of years earlier after a disappointing dry run. And if it couldn't be any more obvious that Hogan was coming for the gold sucker, Ted Turner himself appeared for the title match contract signing. Hogan's debut match in WCW sought to disprove the theory that the money was in the chase, as he beat Flair at Bash at the Beach to win the big gold belt. As out of place as it was, seeing Hulk Hogan doing the same song and dance in the more wrestling-oriented WCW, the 2 hit all their big spots and the crowd went ape for it. In the end, the match itself was less important than its historical significance.
Well, you know something, Mean Gene. Everything that was old is now new again, brother.
Well, he said new, he didn't necessarily say fresh. Diesel's title win capped off a wild week for the World Wrestling Federation. At Survivor Series 94, he and Shawn Michaels had broken up their tag team, and Bob Backlund became the oldest WWF champion in history at 45 years old. But 3 days after the pay-per-view, Diesel bested Backlund in under 10 seconds in Madison Square Garden, and the rest was history. It was kind of a full circle moment for Backlund. After all, he had dropped the world title to the Iron Sheik back in 1983, only to be replaced by Hulk Hogan in the rematch weeks later that officially set off Hulkamania. And here in 1994, it was Diesel who was filling in for Bret Hart for the same outcome in the same building. Kevin Nash's impromptu title victory was certainly a welcome surprise for fans, but even though he had won championship gold in the past, it still felt as if it came from out of nowhere, and it was unclear how he would fit in as the new top guy. Meanwhile, Hogan's title win achieved the greater goal of putting WCW on the same level as the WWF, and doing what Vince McMahon did not do in delivering that dream match on pay-per-view. The first point goes to Hogan. Okay, so each man has won the big gold. That's the easy part. The hard part is looking as good when you're defending the belt as you do when you win it. That being said, which of these two had the better single title defense? Hogan and Flair kept feuding over the title after Bash at the Beach, reaching their climax at that year's Halloween Havoc. Like what happened in July, Hogan beat the Nature Boy to hold on to the belt. Only this time, Ric Flair was forced into retirement, snicker snicker. You know, if you're trying to get the down-home WCW fans to cheer for Hulk Hogan, maybe don't have him retire one of the company's most eternally beloved wrestlers right after showing up. Hogan would face several more challengers like Vader and most of the Dungeon of Doom. But in terms of overall quality and drama in that inaugural reign, it's hard to come up with a more compelling match than Hogan and Flair in October. Then there's Diesel, who unlike Hogan was paired with more modern grapplers at the time. Though his overall demeanor shifted dramatically from brooding badass to suit-wearing fan favorite, his in-ring style remained relatively unchanged as he turned back folks like Sid and King Mabel. Diesel's biggest title defense came against his old pal Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 11, but arguably his best match as champion would end up being his last. He had a great match against Bret Hart at Survivor Series 95 that saw him lose the belt and snap his 358-day reign before turning heel once again. Even though these two matches took place during the same relative time period and both featured total legends, you couldn't find a bigger contrast in terms of personalities, style, energy, or presentation. Hogan and Flair weren't going to get much more out of each other than they already had, but this match from Survivor Series is seriously one of Kevin Nash's best in his whole career. That's why Big Daddy Cool gets the point. Even champions have the occasional off night now and then. We're comparing each of these guys' worst title defenses during those reigns, and we're going to try and figure out which of the two was still a bit more dignified. We've talked ad nauseum here about Halloween Havoc 95. The monster trucks, the giant falling off the roof, the Yeti, all that jazz. But as bad and insane as that all was, it can't compare to the red and yellow dumpster fire 1 year earlier. Starrcade 1994, historically the biggest show of the year for WCW. And what better place for a grudge match between two former best friends, one of whom had never ever been seen as anything remotely resembling World Championship material. Get your tickets now, folks! It all began that August when a mysterious masked man began attacking the Hulkster with a lead pipe. After weeks of speculation, the former Brutus Beefcake was unveiled as the assailant, a soldier working for Kevin Sullivan's Three Faces of Fear. Then it came to a head at the granddaddy of them all in a match that was so jam-packed with terrible selling and goofy pantomime, I think they forgot that it wasn't the rehearsal. Brutai's selling is so ridiculous here that I think it inspired Shawn Michaels in his match with Hogan 11 years later. HBK wasn't taking the piss, he was paying tribute. Hogan hit the leg drop to win, which the Taskmaster politely allowed to happen because God only knows how bad a DQ finish would have looked after all that. But it's not as if things were much easier for Diesel up in New York. Much like Hogan versus Giant, a lot of people make a big deal out of Kevin Nash's match against King Mabel at SummerSlam 95. It certainly isn't perfect. Mabel came close to putting the champion on the shelf for real on more than one occasion, and Big Daddy Cool was constrained due to his opponent's size. But what made it feel even less interesting was the fact that British Bulldog had just turned heel on Diesel only a week before, completely overshadowing the SummerSlam match. Then it finally came time for their match at In Your House 4 in October, a match that was so bad that Vince McMahon allegedly threw his headset down in disgust when the pay-per-view went off the air and chewed out the man he proclaimed as the leader of the new generation backstage. And look, Diesel and Davey was rough, arguably the worst title match in Diesel's time as champion, but it was still a lot better than that meeting of the Best Friends Club we saw at Starrcade 94. Diesel wins this round. Up next, we're pouring over everyone's favorite metric in wrestling, the ratings. Quick disclaimer though, since Monday Nitro didn't debut until late into Hogan's reign, we're going to look at the numbers from WCW Saturday Night instead, as it had comparable ratings to Monday Night Raw and was also a long-standing cable TV tradition. Sorry, no demos here though. The average rating for Saturday Night in the 3 months preceding Hogan's title win was about 2.18. In the 3 months after, the average went up a little to 2.28. Ratings reached a brief peak in March of '95, which coincides with this program with Vader, but by the end of his run, ratings were at a net loss in the Hogan era, down to around 2.07. But perhaps those final numbers could have been affected by the recent debut of Nitro on Mondays. That being said, the Hulkster had an immediate impact on pay-per-view buy rates, as Bash at the Beach more than doubled anything WCW had had put on all year at that point. And even though the company upped the number of pay-per-view events from year to year, the average actually went up. Live attendance did rise significantly during this time period, going from an average of 1,620 to just over 2,200. However, Hogan didn't appear at every WCW house show, so it's tough to give him full credit for the rise in attendance. In the 3 months before Diesel became champion, Raw averaged a 2.7 rating, but in the 3 months after, things took a small dip to 2.63. By the end of his run, the average rating for Raw held steady at 2.64. Though ratings took a slight dip under Diesel, live attendance actually increased year to year, averaging just under 2,994 to a little over 3,095. Diesel's biggest blemish during this run would be the average number of pay-per-view buys, going from 240,094 to 176,095. But keep in mind, 1995 was the first year the Federation had went to monthly pay-per-views, so that drop in numbers can't be solely blamed on Diesel. I'm going to give this one to Hogan by a hair. Though WCW's TV ratings weren't amazing, his presence did lead to increased live attendance and more initial pay-per-view buys, shattering previous records. Over in the WWF, while live attendance did creep up, ratings stayed stagnant and pay-per-view numbers dropped. Hogan's popularity may have been waning, but his star power did help lead to growth for WCW, while the World Wrestling Federation more or less puttered along on Diesel power. Well, it sure is fortunate we have another one coming down to the final round here. Now it's time to look and see which champion had the more noble loss. Ladies and gentlemen, may I present to you Hulk Hogan.
What in the hell is going on?
I mean, look, between a couple of countdowns, a classic review on Halloween Havoc 95, an entire Dungeon of Doom retrospective, and a running gag with my guitar that quite frankly far outlived his life expectancy, I think you know my feelings about this match. But here's the gist of it one more time. By the fall of '95, the Hulk Hogan experiment in WCW was failing. The numbers were going down and fans were getting sick of Hogan's shtick. The DoD was formed with a specific goal in mind of getting people to cheer for Hogan, but all their matches did was suck the air out of the room. WCW brought in the Giant as the latest monster, a mountain of a man who felt no pain and who even survived that infamous plunge off the roof of Cobo Hall. At the end of a fairly competent match for a guy who'd never had one before, the whole thing went to shit when we saw run-ins from Jimmy Hart, Randy Savage, Lex Luger, and finally, the Yeti. Fans didn't even know Hogan had lost the championship until the next night on Nitro when Jimmy Hart invoked some BS contract loophole. All told, not a very classy way to drop the strap, brother. Back in the WWF, Diesel's run as champion was also becoming stale, as fans had grown tired of the corporate mold he was squeezed into. After months of being saddled with subpar opponents, he had arguably the best match of his career in his aforementioned loss to Bret Hart at Survivor Series. Whereas the Hogan title change was an overbooked mess, the Diesel-Bret match was modern and edgy, with one of the WWF's earliest table spots to boot. When comparing this classic match to the Halloween Havoc debacle, there is no debate. Diesel's way out was much better, and he wins the deciding round. Well, there you have it, two dominant champions during a mediocre time in the wrestling business. But the real neat thing about these reigns isn't the reigns themselves, but what they set the stage for. Hulk Hogan turning heel and joining the NWO probably wouldn't have happened if the WCW fans didn't reject him in that initial babyface run. If Nash didn't become WWF champion, he probably wouldn't have had the credibility that made his jump to WCW the huge deal that it was before launching that pivotal storyline. And while Nash may not have set the world on fire as WWF champ, he did his best to hold the line for the company. His reign heralded the unlikely transformation of a WCW cast-off into a bona fide main event star, whereas Hogan's first run as WCW champ felt like a tired retread of what was no longer working. The New World Order may have ultimately kicked the new generation's ass, but when comparing the champions straight up during this time, Diesel's run wins by a finger poke. I mean a finger. So who do you think was the better champion, and which championship matchups do you want to see in future installments? Let me know in the comment section below. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.